Okay, a 60-ish hour update on the Husqvarna 250 fuel injected two-stroke bike. Yeah, 60 hours on it. It's performed flawlessly. Haven't had one single problem with it mechanically. It does everything it's meant to do, and it does it very well. I've done with the 3 races on it now. It's been great going to different altitudes and be able to just start the bike up, let it idle for a minute and let it find its tuning, and it just does what it's meant to do, and then at altitude it just performs perfect. Puts the power down more like a 4-stroke in the mid-range than what the 2-strokes do. Really sort of kind of weird to explain, but it seems to find traction where the 2-strokes usually wouldn't find traction. So if you're looking at a bike that's a good cross between a 2-stroke and a 4-stroke that you don't have to mix gas on, that's going to adjust itself for altitude, well, this is the perfect machine. I had a TX300 before this, a 2-stroke 300, and at the same time I had a FX350 4-stroke. And this bike really is the perfect bridge between those two bikes. It's light, it's agile, it's got heaps of power, it's still got the 2-stroke hit, it's still got the amazing just on idle torque to go up over rocks and really hard obstacles. But when you really put the power into it, it puts the power down like a 4-stroke, it finds traction. It doesn't have traction control, but I guess that'll probably be coming out on the bikes at some stage. Right from day one I ran the gnarly pipe, the Recluse left-hand rear brake, put the titanium foot pegs on, the turbine core 2, and I changed the forks out right from day one as well and put the air forks on. I like the air forks, a lot of people like the Explorer forks. I find the air forks are lighter. They really suit my sort of riding. If you're coming up to some big hits, they can handle the big hits without bottoming out. If you're doing a tight track, you can let them down a little bit, get the steering a little bit sharper and have the bike a little bit softer. Still run the stock spring in the back. I'm about 200 pounds, 93 kilograms, and that is the stock spring in the back. So very strange that this model has the rear spring being stiff enough, but it might be because I'm compensating it with the front forks being the air forks. So don't really know what the story there was, but it's been good. The Magura rear brake does not have the same braking force as what the Brembo does. The Magura just doesn't quite stop quite as well. There's not much in it. It's probably only it's hard to even explain, but you just need that little bit of extra pressure to get the back wheel to do what you want it to do. Because I don't run the foot brake, I run the hand brake off the Magura master cylinder for the rear brake. You sort of feel that a little bit more than what someone running a foot brake would. The foot brake, well, I feel you don't have that same sensitivity as what you do when you're running on the left-hand rear brake. I did change the lever to this lever. It's a little bit longer. I've got it set quite a long way in on the bars so I get good leverage, and that works very well. When I say it's got about 60-ish hours on it, but quite honestly very hard to get to the buttons when you have the handlebars in the forward position. Other than that, haven't had any engine lights come on. You just put oil in the oil tank and off you go. I did just change the front sprocket, put a super sprox on. I changed the rear sprocket right near the start and put a 51 tooth on the back, just because it tended to go into, you ended up using first a little bit more than what you wanted to in tighter terrain, so changed it out, put a 51 on the back, and that just sort of gave a little bit more pep in the second gear. Had a buddy who's got the KTM version of this, and he had a stick come up on this sort of angle and pushed this plug out for the throttle position sensor. I haven't had that sort of problem. Some other people have, but not a big deal. There's the idle screw. A lot of people online are just fucking around and saying, oh, you can't adjust the idle screw and all this sort of bullshit. Just turn it out until it idles properly. It's not going to affect anything else. The choke is here. You don't need the choke. Even in real cold, -6, you just hit the button. It just starts up to a nice idle. Let it warm up for a while. For some reason, the TPI bikes are just the same as the carbide bikes, and they need a while to warm up on these two-strokes. Other than that, running the stock skid plate still, 60 hours, still good. I made a link skid for it, works perfectly. Lets you slide over the rocks and logs a little bit better. I pulled the tail light off, pulled the headlight off because don't need the headlight for racing. 3 races in, it's performed perfectly, as I say. Just a great bike, nimble. Put the gnarly pipe on from day one, 60 hours. The pipe's set up a bit higher than what they do on the earlier Huskies and KTM, so you don't tend to smash them out as much. That's the extent of the damage on mine, which is very, very minor. It's not bent, it's not touching the frame over there where they usually do. They usually touch the frame over here when they've had a few hits. Haven't changed the spark plug, haven't needed to. And everything else on it's great. Well recommended, a bike that's a real good cross between a 2-stroke and a 4-stroke, and still being a lightweight 2-stroke, if that makes any sense.